Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performance Show. We have today a very interesting guest. And what I love about this is that we're really in the same space. So as we're actually talking through the interview, I'm going to be making notes and hopefully I'll learn a few things as well. So I appreciate you being here. Your question is, who is here? We have Pat Rigsby. He's a dad, husband, business coach, entrepreneur, and author. He's built over 25 different businesses, including 2 Entrepreneur Franchise 500 award winners. Today, he coaches entrepreneurs to create their ideal business, one that allows them to earn more, have a greater impact, and enjoy more freedom to live the lives of their dreams. He's here today to share his insights with you and to help you build your business of your dreams. Pat, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I know, I'm going to be able to pick up some great tips from you as well. So I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to chat.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. You know, I was going through your bio and doing a little, cyber stalking on you and figuring out a little bit more than, what came to, at least through the first brush that you put together. And one thing that you left out, or I left out of your bio here, is at age 23, you were actually the youngest baseball coach in the country. I love how you said, nobody else wanted the job, so that's how I got it. I love that. But tell us a little bit about, being a baseball coach. What are some of the things that you've learned along the way, and how have you found that those are applicable to business?
Wow. Well, I was the youngest head baseball coach of a college program in the country at Shawnee State University in Portsmouth, Ohio, for a couple years, and then as you alluded to, nobody really gives that type of job to a 23-year-old with no real experience if it's a good job. So, we were able to do some pretty impressive things over time. Took a program that had never had a winning record, smallest budget in our conference, among the smallest budgets in the country, and made it to the World Series by year 5, where we finished 5th. We were a nationally competitive program, led the country in hitting over my entire duration as a college coach. And I'll tell you, there's not a day that goes by, in the time that I'm doing business coaching in my own business, that lessons that I learned as a baseball coach don't really apply in a big way. I mean, frankly, most of what I do is shaped probably in some way from coaching. And probably the first thing that I learned through coaching was that, recruiting is essentially synonymous with marketing and selling. And so if you want to build a great business, you've got to recruit. You've got to make that the lifeblood of what you do. I mean, as a coach, it doesn't really matter how good you are technically, how good you are with game strategy. If the opponent has significantly better players than you, you're going to lose. So you need to continually be recruiting better players. You need to be better at recruiting. So that was probably lesson number 1, and it helped me tremendously to really be forced to dial in recruiting if I wanted to compete, because every business that I've had, every business that I've been involved in since, the first domino is getting clients or customers. So, seeing that as a priority was key. Whereas a lot of people, they think of in their business, well, hey, if I'm just good at my craft, people will just magically show up at the door. It just was something I think was hardwired into me early on. The second thing, and it's kind of a spin-off of that, was how important follow-up is. In an era now where it seems like we can reach, we can reach people so easily and so quickly with a Facebook ad or something, we've almost lost sight of the importance of following up and just staying with people till they're ready to buy, till they're ready to become a client. Well, in recruiting, nobody, you send a first letter to a prospect, you reach out, you make contact, and there's a process. There's a follow-up process where you're going to stay in contact with them through mail, through email, over the phone. You're going to get them on campus. And follow-up is a prerequisite of being successful. And so making sure that was a critical part of any business that I've been involved in, it, again, was another key lesson. Probably the third was really my hand was very much forced, not having much of a budget. We had a $2,000 budget for assistant coaches. So basically, I'm taking on volunteer assistants or kids, that are finishing up their degree and staying on campus until they're done. So I had to become very systematic because I had assistant coach turnover every year. So I had to put processes in place. We had to have, a framework for how we operated practices, what our game, what our game strategy was going to look like, even our internal language. So always having systems in place was just something that I figured out early on because, you can't change and adapt completely and reinvent yourself anytime you get a new person coming onto your team. The last thing that I would say was critical. Well, I guess there were two. One would just be that everything's about people, right? You're so intimately involved with these athletes, and you understand that, if they break up with their girlfriend, if they're stressed out because of tests, whatever else, it's going to impact their performance. And so you have to be sensitive to that and understand that they're people first, team members second. So, navigating that and understanding them and respecting them and leading them as people first, I think was critical to the success then. It's critical to any leader or business owner success. And then the final thing would be, the beauty of any sport is there's a scoreboard, right? It's some means of keeping score. And it just gives you something to measure yourself against at all times. And so I think that, it's so easy for a business owner to wake up and just take care of the things that seem urgent, put out fires, be reactive to everything that kind of comes their way. And they're not moving toward their desired outcome. Well, having a scoreboard kind of forces you to do that.
That is great. That is really, really good. I was never I'm never a great athlete when it came to kind of high school or college sports. I'm 6'4". I never learned how to dribble. So there aren't too many 6'4" centers in the NBA or even in college. So that never progressed. But I did play baseball. Not very well. I was a pitcher. I was a pitcher in baseball, and I threw sidearm. So being so tall, I would come off the mound sidearm, and for right-handed batters, it was very intimidating. When they actually saw my stats, it was even more intimidating because I had the tendency to hit people all the time, including my teammates in practice. So I was never very good at. And I guess that also set a fear in me that as a batter, I was a very timid batter because I didn't like this hard baseball coming flying, through the air. I know how many times I hit people, so I was adverse to getting hit. So I never became a great baseball player. But it reminded me that as a batter, especially as you progress up into college and you progress into the NFL. This is great. Let's just combine pitchers and NFL on a baseball story. As a Major League Baseball player, what's the secret to being a great batter? And I have a reason for asking this because I'll tell you after you answer the question.
I think it's the ability to manage fear and adversity. The best hitters, at any level still fail more often than they succeed. And so you can't dwell on the last at bat where you struck out, the fact that you're 0 for 4, anything like that. I had a wonderful mentor of mine who ended up being an all-star in the major leagues and World Series winning hitting coach for the Blue Jays tell me that when he turned the corner in his career was when, in the beginning, if he was 0 for 3 or 0 for 4 in a game, he knew if he batted again, he was done. Like he was already, the at bat was already lost. When he turned the corner, was when he decided that, okay, if I'm 0 for 3 or 0 for 4, the pitcher's in trouble because I'm due. And it was just such a wonderful mentality that, you handle adversity, you use that information, and it preps you to be more successful the next time around. And frankly, it's a hard thing to learn, because if you are talking about like basketball or something, you miss a shot, you get to come right back down the court and maybe you shoot again 40 seconds later. Yeah. Baseball, you're dwelling on that for probably 45 minutes or an hour before your spot comes up in the lineup again.
Yeah, so very similar to prospecting and selling, where your close rate is 50%. Wow. So the more no's you get, the yeses are coming.
Yep. Yeah.
And in the major leagues, the batter has to decide whether he's going to swing the bat way before the ball has it been released yet? Is it based on just the movement of the pitcher? This is great. I don't know how many times I'm going to say pitcher instead of pitcher.
Well, they've got to process information pretty quickly. They got less than a half a second. So, yeah, the ball's out of the pitcher's hands, but it's not too far out of the pitcher's hand when they're making this decision. Frankly, when you think of it, like when you're immersed in it, it's just kind of what you do. So you get comfortable with it. It's probably a little bit like if you've never gotten up on a stage and spoken in front of people, you're like, man, I could never imagine doing that. But for guys who do it for a living, they're pretty comfortable with it. But when you step away from it, it's like, how in the world does somebody hit a 98-mile-an-hour fastball where they've got about 0.4 seconds to not only decide that where they're going to swing, but also figure out where the ball is going to go? Looking back now, I'm like, man, I don't know how anybody does that.
And do you find that, this is something that is learned, or the athletes that can do this, is this something that they were, born with, or is it something they develop? And is it something that being able to anticipate what's coming, of course, as business owners, that's what we need to do. We need to survey the land, and we need to anticipate what's coming to the best of our ability. And in business, we usually get pretty good at that. But it seems like the quickness in which they need to make a decision is a really interesting skill. And if business owners could learn to anticipate things earlier, would certainly help them in their business. So is it just by doing it that they got better at it, or is there something that they do that helps them?
Well, I think that with a lot of things, there has to be a baseline level of aptitude and talent that somebody builds off of, but then so much of it is just high quality practice. You get a lot of repetitions at anything. You get comfortable doing that thing more. The degree of difficulty goes up. The great thing about competitive sports is, I have an 8-year-old now that plays, and he's pretty good for being 8, but no matter what, it's not like he's facing 98-mile-an-hour fastballs.
Yeah.
There's this logical progression. So it's never this jump from, hey, I'm facing a pitch that's 45 to I'm facing one that's 98. It's just going to kind of incrementally increase. And I think that's what a lot of business looks like. Like, you get practice, you get comfortable processing information. And what's so wonderful, and mind you, I think sports are great as a kind of a teaching tool for business and things like that. There are plenty of other ways that somebody can learn it. But I think that what's great about it that you alluded to is so much of being a leader, so much of being a high performer anywhere is about making decisions, making good decisions. And you're just having to process information so quickly. You're having to practice that it has to prepare you to do it with for mine, it's just quality practice and continuing to learn so you can anticipate, so you can have a higher probability of making the right decision more often.
You like myself, we've owned multiple businesses, and, it's interesting to see how you progress as a leader throughout that process. And it's interesting because newer entrepreneurs look at least they've discussed this with me, I'm sure they have with you as well, is that, it looks so easy. And I don't know about you, but I found myself, it's like, look, it doesn't get any easier. You don't have all the answers. You just fall faster, and you usually get off the ground before somebody sees you lying there. You just don't stay. But we get knocked down probably even more. It's just, it's kind of like that little punching dummy where you just get knocked down and you get back up. All right, don't do it that way again. What have you found over your career as you moved into, you had your first 5 businesses and then the last 5? What were some of the differences, and what were some of the things that made it more, I'm going to make an assumption here, that they became quicker and easier for you to scale, develop, get up and running, get the profitability, etc.?
I think you touched on it already. Being okay with failing faster, with making decisions more quickly, because a lot of times, we hesitate based on fear. We're waiting for this perfect answer. But I think the more you move along, you understand that there is no perfect answer. It's only as an informed a decision as we can make. Yeah. And you also, I think, recognize that, it probably sounds cliche, but failure isn't fatal, right? And so after you've screwed up a few times, after you've missed the mark a few times, you're not as afraid of it, because you understand that usually it's a precursor to something better, because you learn something that's going to make the next attempt more likely to be successful. So, for me, it's being able to make decisions more quickly, to say no to things more quickly, because I'm not fearing missing out on something. So I think you just are able to move faster because you don't have the fears that you had earlier on.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I had a brilliant question, which I lost total track of what it was. I will think of it here. I'll come back to it. You touched on, I know what it is. Success is a really lousy teacher. Failure, on the other hand, is a very good teacher. What are some of the lessons that you learned along the way?
So you mentioned the baseball thing, right? So at the end of my time as a baseball coach, where I had been, by most measures, very successful, I had a kind of a power struggle, a falling out with our vice president of student affairs, and I was forced to resign. And that was a really tough thing, because that was really my first significant failure, and it was my identity. That was what I identified as, was baseball coach. And so I think that taught me very quickly that failure isn't fatal. It's not the end of the road. In fact, it opened the door to doing some different things that I had thought about, but maybe I was afraid to take the leap, and kind of forced my hand. And and I felt kind of stuck where I was at professionally there, but I think I was afraid to make a move. And once I did, I was like, man, you know what? This stuff, it's no big deal. If somebody says no to me, frankly, if a prospect says no to me after knowing me for 60 minutes, it's kind of just going to roll off my back, because I'm like, well, these people said no to me and they knew me for like a decade. So I think that was a big one. I think that, I sold a number of businesses at the end of 2014, and the businesses were healthy and successful at that point, but I felt personally, I wasn't nearly as fulfilled as I probably thought I would have been, having built them up. And I thought, I think we all have this vision of, hey, when I get to this point, I'm going to feel this way and my life's going to be this way. And I was stressed out. Feel like I had balance in my life, everything. And so I think that was a wonderful reminder for me, a great lesson that, we're in control of whatever we're going to get. And so we need to make the decisions to have the outcome that we want. Otherwise, if we just let it drift and evolve, there's almost zero chance we're going to end out at a place that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Those are probably the two biggest takeaways for me.
I want to touch on something that you spoke about a little bit earlier, and that is the scoreboard. We talk a lot about that here with our clients. And if you go to a ballpark, you will notice that the scoreboard is very prominent. And it's the same way that it needs to be in your business. It needs to be out in the open. Everybody needs to know what the score is. And whether it's a good score or a bad score, it doesn't change. You got to know the truth. And if I walk into an office and I don't see a scoreboard, I know they're missing a ton of opportunity.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears here for a little bit and talk about the 8 guiding principles for an ideal business.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Man, you're going to put me on the spot, and I'm going to have to remember them word for word or something.
Pick 6 out of 8.
Man, do I have a list in front of me here? Because I know I'm going to paraphrase everything, but
that's okay. But see, we're going to take a little different, route here, and you never know what might come out of it. So give it to me.
So, the first thing that I think of is that we need to define what success is to us, right? We don't need to let somebody else define it. We don't need to just borrow somebody else's definition of success or their kind of what their version is, because they have their own values, their own goals, their own strengths and personalities. And if we try to live by their rules, we're going to end up probably running into some roadblocks and frustrations along the way. So I think that's key. I think we need to define what success is for us and get clear about it. We need to have a clear vision that serves as that kind of destination. If we're going to have a GPS, so to speak, well, we got to plug in a destination if we want to take a pretty direct route. Yeah. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is, we want to play to our strengths. We're kind of taught at an early age, hey, you've got to clear up your weaknesses. You got to improve on these weaknesses and everything else. And the people who succeed at the highest level in any profession are building around their strengths. They're people who are capitalizing on what Dan Sullivan might call your unique ability. There's always somebody else whose strengths can complement yours and can probably sit next to you and kind of fill in those areas of deficiency or areas that you're not strong. But we're never going to be, a 10 across the board in all areas. So the better idea, if we want to be successful, is to define what are we good at, what do our experiences offer us, what can we bring to the table that very few others can, and build around those. And then the things that anybody can do or somebody else can do, hand those off. It's going to energize us. It's going to allow us to be unique and kind of become a category of one. It's going to, really, I think, keep us inspired and motivated and give us the highest probability of standing out and succeeding. The third thing that I think of is kind of along those same lines. Be okay with being a category of one. Be different. I think you need to be different. You need to be better. But a lot of times, the way you are better is by being different. Bringing something slightly unique to the table, saying, hey, we're going to do these things better than everybody else, and say quality or the quality of the product, quality of service is how we're going to differentiate, or we're going to slide over and be kind of the proverbial apples to oranges and show up just a little bit differently than everybody else in the market. I mean, if you look at really anything that's happened in any market where there's been some sort of disruption, it everybody else. I know we saw it in the fitness landscape. Planet Fitness kind of turned it on its head because they said, every other health club out here is going to charge $40, $50, $60 a month for membership. They're going to ask for some long commitment. We're going to tell you no commitment, $10 a month. We'll give you pizza and Tootsie Rolls. Come on in. And it was different. And a lot of people internally kind of turned their nose up at it. They're like, pizza, Tootsie Rolls, all that. I'm like, you don't get it. This is being inclusive. This is telling you we're not going to judge you because you have pizza every once in a while. We're not going to judge you because you still have some Halloween candy left over. And so they decided to show up differently in the market, and now they're the preeminent health club chain. So I think being okay with not just being a Me Too business in whatever category you're in it is critical. The fourth thing that I would say is kind of a driver for an ideal business is, you've got to be focused on attracting the right person. You need to understand who your ideal client, patient, customer is, and go and pursue them. You've got to be willing to understand kind of this sequence of events that I think occurs in every business. I think that we attract somebody, then there's a conversion process, then we deliver them this dream country result through an experience they enjoy. And it starts by attracting. Attracting and converting aren't the same thing. I don't think that people first show an interest in something and buy in that same instant in almost any case, especially a meaningful purchase. So we have to be willing to go and attract this person by basically saying, look, we're the best possible solution from you. We're going to give you something of value for your attention. And then we move to, the next step, that fifth step, that convert. We talked about follow up with the baseball side of stuff. Most people don't make meaningful buying decisions in that first 24, 48, 72 hours. In many cases, it's beyond 90 days. So you've got to be the one to stay the course. And you see it so often with businesses that struggle. They're like, well, these people aren't serious. They're tire kickers, whatever else. I'm like, no, they're making a decision on their timeline, and you need to kind of ride it out, educate them, motivate them, and follow up with them until they're ready. And if you do, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. And then,
I love that big scarcity model. We have an online course, and you can only buy it for the next 3 days. It's like, look, or it has limited quantities. Love that one as well. If you're really serious about having me as a client, continue to work with me. No. Don't. Anyway, that just annoys me. Go ahead. Yeah. I interrupted you.
I don't know. And so the sixth component of this, I think, is understanding that our job is to deliver this dream come true result for somebody through an experience they enjoy. And the experiential part of it, it's going to vary in every industry. I kind of come to it from the fitness industry where somebody's going to be with you for a long time and there's not as much immediate gratification. I mean, if you and I go out to dinner, we go to a restaurant, within an hour, we've had the steak and we've got the gratification. Well, somebody goes to a gym and they want to lose 20 pounds, they don't get it in an hour. So the experiential part of it, making sure that somebody buys into the process and enjoys that, I think is key, especially if we're wanting to generate referrals, if we're wanting to generate either retention or repeat business, depending on the model. And, I think that if you build a business that is centered around giving somebody what they actually want and doing it through that enjoyable experience, instead of just saying, I want to sell them this thing that I want to sell, you're going to be set up to be much, much more successful. So those are the first kind of 6 in paraphrase.
And I'm going to leave you at 6. And if the audience wants to find out what the other 2 are, you'll have to email Pat. See, I knew it was going to work. Pat, you have a new book out. Kind of give us a little Cliff Notes version of it. Just some of the high points.
Yeah. So the ideal business formula was really kind of spurned on by what I mentioned when I sold all those businesses, and I had kind of got to that point where I was burned out, and I said, okay, you know what? If I can build this many businesses to this level of success or proficiency, then you would think I could build something that really serves me both personally and professionally. So I spent a lot of time kind of re-engineering how I approached business, not just thinking in terms of bigger, but actually better. And so really the ideal business formula is kind of the process that I went through, the process that I kind of fine-tuned and came up with, and now what I teach to my clients to help them build a business that, you know, allows them to be successful professionally, but at the same time be fulfilled personally. And you know, I think somewhere along the way we've been convinced that there's some honor or something in this hustle and grind and 90 or 100-hour weeks or whatever else. And sure, everybody has to go through a real push phase in the beginning of any startup. But if you're still behaving like a startup 5 or 10 years in, something's amiss. So, you know, I wanted to give somebody a blueprint that they can use to craft whatever their ideal is. And mine might be different than yours, and it's certainly going to be different than the readers. But it's not about modeling my business or your business or whoever else's. It's about using those tools and that framework to craft your own idea.
Terrific. You know, I know you've got some coaching programs, you've got some masterminds. Tell the audience how they can get in touch with you.
Well, the easiest place to find me is patrigsby.com, but I've even put together a kind of a cool little thing where if somebody wants to get a digital copy of the book, they can go to patrigsby.com/peak, and we'll give them a digital copy of it. And then I also have my ideal business scorecard where they can kind of grade themselves as to how their business stacks up. And really the areas that maybe, you know, they've got some room for improvement on. So, you know, they can connect with me there, or if they just want to email me directly at pat@patrigsby.com.
Pat, it has been a pleasure having you on the show today. We could have kept going for hours here. I had about 15 other questions. But I appreciate you being on today. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me. It's truly been my pleasure and enjoyed it a bunch.
Thanks.